You remember that line where Darth Vader says, "What is thy bidding?" It's like, yeah, what is thy bidding? Versus how can we win together? Is the authoritarian person connecting with the other person? No. Is the Steve Kerr, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Yoda connecting? Oh my God, 1,000,000%.
Yes. Hello and welcome to the podcast. My guest is Dr. Adam Dorsay. He's a psychologist and coach for high-performing individuals, including Silicon Valley executives and professional athletes. He's a TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, podcaster, and author. Adam's new book, Super Psyched, is about the 4 types of connection and how you can create your own connection formula for better results and a happier life. Super Psyched has gotten praise from the likes of Daniel Pink, Guy Kawasaki, and Mel Robbins. Adam and I had a great conversation about human connection with topics ranging from Star Wars to the Golden State Warriors to men's mental health. Enjoy the podcast with my guest, Dr. Adam Dorsay. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Michael, I'm so happy to be here.
I am super psyched to be here. Use that. We're talking about your book, Super Psyched, and I want to dive right into that. It's a really interesting book, and I want to talk about the 4 types of connection. And when I saw that, it totally made sense to me. But tell us what the 4 types of connection are in your book.
Sure. I really wrote this book with the intention of expanding the idea of all the ways that we connect and really zeroing in on what they are at the same time. So it sounds like a contradiction, expanding and zeroing. But oftentimes you'll read about books about connecting with your partner, connecting with your kids, connecting with your colleagues. But what about the 4 ways we connect? We connect starting, if you see them as concentric circles, we start with ourselves. And then rippling outward, we connect with others. Connecting with others could be me connecting with my wife, could be connecting with my kids, could be connecting with you. And I actually include pets because we have a lot of people in this world who recognize that pets are significant others in their lives. I'm not talking about romantic partners. I'm talking about significant others that really are important to them. And the health benefits are absolutely incredible. But rippling outwards, it's how we connect to the world, how we connect. The world includes things like our work, nature, art, and other entities that I describe in the book. And then the 4th circle is how we connect to something greater. For some people, that means religion. For the most orthodox atheist, it could mean how we connect to the Grand Canyon through awe or something like it. So we have all 4 connection areas, and for everyone, we are hit differently. Some people are not outdoor people, and so nature is not going to be a big connection source, but they might be art people and they want to be in a museum all day, or they might be love being in kind of some smoky jazz club. That might be a way that they connect. So what I really wanted from this book was to have people figure out what their own formulas were for how they feel most connected, so that the dash between their birth and death date is one of connectedness on their definitions.
Yeah, I love that. It's really about customizing it, right? But the 4 types sound, I mean, when I read that, it seemed to me universal, like it resonated with me. But I'm wondering if there's people who might be resistant to saying, okay, spirituality, right? Because that's such a loaded word, right? But like you said, someone's maybe a hardcore atheist. I mean, Grand Canyon, how could you not be kind of in awe seeing that? So that could be like that connection. Like you said, something, greater than yourself. Do you think that's
Absolutely? Carl Sagan was, a known atheist, but what was he into? He was into the cosmos.
That's
And
right.
I can virtually guarantee you, I never talked to Carl Sagan, but I would imagine that he felt a sense of awe and how small he was. So I didn't call it spiritual. I actually called it something greater.
Right. Yeah.
And something greater even could be you and me talking are greater than me alone or you alone. Like what's happening right now is greater than either of us.
Yeah. I think there's a huge power in that. I was talking to someone else about this recently, about something greater than yourself in sports performance. So someone who was, very nervous about a particular event, and I said, well, what about all the other people you might inspire? Like even if you get last place in a running race, and someone watches you come in, they're inspired and they cheer you on. Like that's this connection to something greater than yourself, which is other people are witnessing your performance. And even if you're not satisfied with it, maybe somebody else is. So I always remind people of that, of like, you're doing your endeavor for a greater reason than yourself, and you don't really know it. Like there's this positive ripple effect. So, someone sees you finish a race in last place, they're maybe inspired to not give up on something in their life, et cetera, and that kind of ripples out. So I think those four types of connection I think they're universal. I think they seem to be pretty essential for a happy life.
I love where you're going with this, Michael, because I remember watching Rocky 1, the first one where he loses. Sorry, spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the movie, that's on you.
Yeah, right.
But I remember I don't know, I was really young, let's say 8 or something. And I was so upset because he didn't win. I didn't understand the meaning. And you're talking about coming in last place and how that in and of itself can be a victory. That it can be, hey, it's not just about the external result. It's about the internal process of having been in the race, or in Rocky's case, saying, I'm going to go all rounds with Apollo. I'm just some guy from South Philadelphia, but I'm going to go all the rounds, and that will be my victory.
Right.
Perhaps finishing the race in and of itself, irrespective of the result, is the victory. Yeah. And I was telling you offline, you used to be a professional cyclist. Had you met me on the road, you would have left me in the dust, but I would have finished the ride. And I called myself Team Turtle, believe it or not, because I was one of the last people in camp on the AIDS ride, but I was having a blast and it didn't matter. I loved I just liked finishing the day. So for me, that was a win.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking offline about your interview with Steve Kerr of the Golden State Warriors. And anyone can find that just by Googling your name and Steve Kerr's name. It's right there. It's a fascinating interview. And you guys were talking about culture. And that's kind of a loaded word too. Like, what is that? What does that mean? Sometimes it's just vapid kind of buzzword. People don't really know what it means. But in talking about that, not just in the Golden State Warriors and sports, but like in corporate, any type of a team that is high achieving and high performing. First of all, like what would you define culture as? And then secondly, is culture, or a nurturing culture specifically, is that essential for high performance?
There's an unwritten contract that you and I are both aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And that informs how we comport ourselves, how we interact.
Right.
And to me, that is kind of the sourdough starter of culture, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's how we basically establish a culture. And one of the things that I can tell you about just the way you and I have already connected is that you and I probably would lean into certain values that would inform that culture. I can tell you're a kind individual. I'm using that instead of nice. People use the word nice a lot. I don't love that word. It often can imply that they're a pushover. In your case, I can tell you're a strong, gentle, and warm person who also probably has boundaries. And that would be part of the culture. Like some cultures say no boundaries at all. I used to live in Japan. And the word no was not usually something that could be uttered, particularly in a cultural, in a corporate space. Uh-huh. Whereas I have a feeling that if you and I were to establish a friendship, the culture would include us having boundaries with each other. Yeah. That would be part of it. So oftentimes it's an unwritten, but somehow understood contract is the word I would use. How it informs is we begin to dance accordingly. I'm using the word dance very roughly. We my wife and I have a culture of like, if you want something, ask for it. Like, don't expect me to read your mind, because we both know that doesn't have a high hit rate.
Right.
But if you want something, it's up to you to ask for it. And I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some cultures in which you're supposed to infer what the other person might be thinking. And of course, even there, the hit rate might not be as great. So, one of the things that it draws back to connection is as I connect with myself, it has been hard for me to articulate what I want because I grew up not really knowing what I wanted and terrified to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been very healing for me to connect with myself as I connect with the other and ask for what I want, and for that to be baked into our culture.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, it's like the tone maybe that's set from the get-go of a relationship, either the two of us talking or, Steve Kerr comes in, his first meeting with the team, what's the tone, right? So
Right.
like you can say stuff, but people are going to watch how you act, how you behave, what is unwritten, like you said. So it seems to me like maybe a simile for culture would be tone or vibe or something like that, where you can really even just feel if you feel safe to say something, if you feel inside like, hey, in this relationship, either with my boss or with my coach or on this team, what is the feeling I get? Can I be myself? Can I be authentic, or do I have to kind of put on this mask and be guarded? And you can get great results in an organization with a more authoritative or authoritarian kind of leadership where people don't get to be themselves and they just work. You can get results that way, but like we were talking before the podcast, like, well, let me ask you this: what do you think is more sustainable in
That's the right word.
right.
You
In
nailed
terms of
it.
performance, right? So
From where
goal
I
state,
sit.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. So I think it's more sustainable to have a culture, say like the Golden State Warriors, where it is more authentic. Maybe they're able to talk about things, and proofs in the pudding. They won a number of championships, right? As opposed to, oh, I mean, we could take someone like Bobby Knight in basketball.
That's
That's a
exactly where I was going to. Bobby
right.
Knight is a perfect example.
Also got great results, right?
But how long did he actually work with a team that was a college team? Between 1 and 4 years per player.
Right. Good point. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And Steve has been working with Steph Curry, Draymond Green uh, for a decade,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
has their loyalty.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're talking about an authoritarian
Hmm.
leader, people
Yeah.
will consent and resent.
Mm.
They'll do the thing, but everyone, I mean, there's a great quote in the John Adams HBO series where John Adams bludgeoned people with the truth. He was right all the time, but he was abrasive and unpleasant. And his wife, Abigail, rightly said, men wish to believe they've come to their own conclusions. And that was something John needed to learn so that he could actually cultivate better, and even the word cultivate has etymological roots of the word culture,
Yeah.
cultivate better relationships. Step forward to today. Amy Edmondson, professor at Harvard Business School, the creator of the term psychological safety. What she's found is that organizations in which people are allowed to be themselves, of course, I'm not talking about being a complete jerk,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about show up who they are and they're not living in fear.
Right.
Instead, they are living in pursuit of their targets.
Mm.
There's a big difference between an
Yeah.
approach goal and an avoid goal. An avoid goal is I don't want to get fired. The approach goal is I want to excel.
Yes. Yeah.
And when we have psychological safety, the type that Steve Kerr absolutely stands behind, we get people who are more loyal, we get greater innovation, we get greater results. The teams and the organizations that have greater levels of psychological safety are virtually always more innovative, and they have lower attrition rates by a long shot,
Yeah.
whether it's actual attrition where people leave or quiet quitting, which
Mhm.
is a new phenomenon. Get an authoritarian
Yeah.
involved, and people will quiet quit. They'll do it, but they won't enjoy doing it while they're doing it.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. It's like fear burns a lot of calories. It takes a lot of energy.
Yes.
If you're going to be performing at your best, like fear could be a uh, short-term strategy, maybe. But
Absolutely.
right, so
But
like,
it's not a great one to pull out. It should be very judiciously. Think about this for a second. Who are the animals that exhibit fear and who are the animals that don't as much?
Mhm.
Well, the animals like rats and deer have eyes on the side of their head because they are prey,
Mm.
whereas you and I and dogs and cats and eagles have
Yeah,
our eyes that are goal centered. They are looking at a target.
yeah,
And that is how we're wired. And if we want to get the best results from people, we need to keep that in mind. That's why that whole John Adams idea of men wish to believe they've come to their own conclusions, or Steve Kerr's idea of having mindfulness, joy, competition, and what is the, and I believe, did I say compassion? Those are his four.
yeah,
Those are his four values that he uses to win at incredible rates.
yeah,
In the longevity of his players, people want to perform for that guy
yeah.
because he is the kindly Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda father rather than the Palpatine who is, I'll do it. You remember that line where Darth Vader says, "What is thy bidding?" It's like, yeah, what is thy bidding versus how can we win together? What is
Yeah.
thy bidding? That's what he says to Palpatine in, I think it's The Empire Strikes Back or one of them. Great movies. I love them.
Yes.
Very psychological. I think that anybody who's psychologically curious needs to watch 4, 5, and 6, which are the first three. Avoid the second round of 1,
Yeah.
2, and 3, and then go right to 7, 8, 9 is fine. But that's my Star Wars geekiness.
I like how
But
we're both Star Wars nerds for sure.
but yeah, we want to lead with the Jedi, and
Yeah.
when you think about it, comes back to the word connection. That is what this book is all about. Is the authoritarian person connecting with the
Mhm.
other person? No.
Yeah.
Is the Steve Kerr, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Yoda connecting?
Right.
Oh my God, 1,000,000%.
Yes. Yes. It seems to me like it's riskier and kind of like a leap of faith to connect with people because you're getting into these other variables. I'm talking about like a team here. So say you take someone who feels more comfortable as an authoritarian. I know it's best for this company. I know it's best for this team, right? I know what's going on. I'm not going to have any surprises here. I'm going to do it my way. It takes a lot of courage, really, to trust others and to delegate and to create that psychological safety because you're bringing more variables in. Somebody might have a way of doing something that you don't like, but it might be effective. So, leadership is really, if you don't take a risk in leadership in terms of trusting people, sure, you can set the example and be a really strong leader, but you got to trust your team, gotta have that psychological safety, like you said, because again, I think fear burns a lot of calories. It's not sustainable, and you're gonna have people doing that quiet quitting, either on a sports team or in the corporate level as well. You know?
I had a thoughtful conversation with the dean of Columbia Business School, Adam Galinsky, who wrote a book called Inspire, where he describes the difference between an inspirational leader and an infuriating leader. And interestingly, inspirational leaders and infuriating leaders' qualities transcend borders and cultures.
Hmm.
They have uh, similar experiences of those traits, regardless of where they transpire in the world. And what we're talking about right now is all of the traits. I mean, Steve Kerr embodies the traits of the inspiring versus the infuriating leader. Yes, the infuriating leader might get moments of performance, but again, the people do it with that just sour resentment
Mhm.
as they do it, and they do not have the real version of loyalty.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that the world in which my sons work
Mhm.
is led by the Jedi's and not the Siths, because
Mhm.
sadly, people love to lionize
Yeah.
the bad actors who are, they seem powerful, and there is something sexy, there's something very metal about it. It's like, think about Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and all these bands and this
Charisma.
shirts that you
Yeah.
get to wear, like
Yeah.
they seem like that.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
fact of the matter is that is not the, I mean, and that's shadow material from a Jungian standpoint. The music makes sense and it's good. I mean, I listened to a lot of that type of stuff growing up and I still love it,
Yeah.
but it's shadow material. It should not be the main course. It's
Right.
a supplement and to be
Right.
used
Yeah.
judiciously, certainly not in a leadership role.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the hyper ego in a way that could be in short doses, it could be useful, but in the long term,
Totally.
right? Long term, you're not going to be winning. You're not going to be happy also. Because we're talking about high performance here, but often in these conversations, high performers don't talk about happiness. It's like, are you sure you're achieving, but are you miserable? Are you an athlete? And we're talking about Michael Jordan before. Like, he was not never really let himself be really happy after a victory. It's like, what's next? Which
It's
is,
always what's next.
I mean, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, like you're a human too. Like you gotta enjoy your life as well.
You nailed it. What does mindfulness talk about? It's being aware of what's going on while it's going on. And if we're thinking about next, we're not
Yeah.
aware of what's going on while it's going on. We have this hungry ghost inside of us, to borrow from an old, Buddhist idea. It's not sustainable. And at the end of our lives, like, do we take all our trophies with us, or do we take the memories of great moments?
Right.
And if we're not there for those moments, and there have
Mhm.
been many great moments that sadly I must confess I was not fully there for. James Joyce writes about Mr. Duffy, who lived a short distance from his body. The job is to be here now. I know that sounds like a Ram Dass book, because it is a Ram Dass book, but he nailed it in one
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to say, actually very hard to do. Um, so I watched somebody. For me, Steph Curry is the embodiment of joy.
Mm.
I watch this man who is shorter shorter than his opponents, shoot over
Yeah.
their heads, having the most 3-pointers in history, and he does it with a smile on his face the whole time. Now that's how I want to be. I want to
Mm.
be there for it. He's there for it. And then he goes, my he seems to have a great marriage and he seems to be a good father. He seems to really, really be there for the stuff.
Yeah.
And if we're going to look to a great athlete, look for me, and I'm not inside his head. I don't know him personally, but I look to Steph Curry.
Yeah. You can tell he's having fun when he's playing.
Totally. He's having a blast.
Yeah. And I think that's sustainable, right? Getting back to like energy, if you that kind of energy is longer, cleaner burning, like that's very sustainable. The anger, the darkness, we could talk about Draymond Green, right?
I
Sometimes
love him. I love
yeah,
him.
he's a likable
He's
guy, but to be fair, like he's a little bit of a dirty player from time to time.
he's
So
complex.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, if we're, I mean, I don't have the expertise to talk about it at the level of one of the sports people, but I will say he appears, based on my viewing of him, in spite of his you know less than perfect behavior on the court from time to time, which even Clay Thompson admitted on one of his podcasts pissed him off.
uh-huh, yeah,
Um, there's I don't know that I've ever seen somebody with more heart in the game. Like,
yeah,
the guy is just completely in it, and I'm
yeah,
not excusing it, when he does something wrong, but man, I do see, I do see he also's got one of the biggest, greatest smiles, and I can tell there's joy there as well.
yeah,
And I can tell he's a great guy. Like, I just love him. But anyway, that's an
yeah.
aside.
No, the Golden State Warriors have said that, and Steve Kerr's even said this too, that he adds like a spirit and a fire to the team.
Oh,
He's done pep talks to the team before and turned things around. So it's interesting when you get a team of the best in the world in any kind of endeavor. You do get these different personalities, and then like you said, that psychological safe space. Like Draymond can be Draymond, right? Steph can be Steph, and I think that's really the thing for like a leader is to set that psychological.
totally. And to get closer to your home, I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, there are certain people when you see him on the court,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, these guys get it. Like,
Mm.
they have made it. They have ascended. They have recognized their goal to make it in the NBA, and they're the best in show. Enjoy it. Like,
Right. Yeah.
enjoy it. I mean, certainly win,
Yes.
but winning is not the only thing. A big part of winning is actually recognizing, oh my God, I'm here. And that in and of itself is incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, to think of, I mean, how rarefied is that air? How many people in the world play basketball? Millions. How many
Yeah.
people make it to the NBA? We're talking low triple digits. It's not very many people. And so if you're there and you're
Hmm.
in the 0.0001% or whatever it is mathematically, enjoy it while you're there. Yeah, I'm not saying don't kick ass, of course.
Hmm.
But one of the ways that we can connect with ourselves is through gratitude. What we appreciate appreciates.
Yeah.
That's, as in, since
Hmm.
our connection with ourself informs all the other connections. It's not narcissistic. It's not
Yeah.
self-absorbed to know who you are and to connect with who you are.
Yeah.
But instead, it's actually you have a lot more to give if you know what's in there.
Yeah.
Um, One of the ways that we can even prime the pump if you don't, by the way, paradoxically, is through volunteerism or through working with the team. Harville Hendricks, who's one of the great relationship thought leaders who's ever lived, a person who gave Oprah, whose episode was Oprah Winfrey's first Emmy, and he's been on my podcast a few times and helped me come up with the definition of connection itself. He says that all learning transpires through relationship. Now,
Mhm.
relationship could be interpersonal. It could be you and me. I'm learning from you right now.
Mhm.
It could be through volunteerism and having part of a team. And it could also be, as you know, relating to the bike,
Mhm.
learning about who you are
Mhm.
based on, like, wow, I've got wind coming at me. You were a professional cyclist. I know you had wind, probably rain coming at you at times while you were going uphill, lactic acid building up in your thighs, causing memories from your childhood that might have been painful while you were going uphill. Because oftentimes when we experience pain, our brain starts associated with other pain through memory.
Yeah.
And you learned that you could push through.
Mhm.
A lot of people would say, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm off the bike. I can't handle it. You learned through your relationship with the bike. So I love this concept of we learn. We're all learning to transpires through relationship. You learned about yourself. You
Right.
learned who you are. And that informed you as a person who worked in finance in the Bay Area. It informed you as you got your master's later in life and as you became a therapist. So, uh, really, really connecting with our centers is
Mhm.
so crucial. And one of the things we also know through deathbed studies, it sounds really cruel, is that we don't ask for our trophies on our deathbed. We don't ask for accolades. What we ask for is the people who we love, and we think about the risks not taken, not the,
Uh-huh.
not it doesn't matter if we fail, but it's
Regrets,
the
right?
risks not taken
Right.
and love left on the table. And I would go so far as saying that love left on the table could even include love for the game that we
Sure.
didn't experience while we were on the court during that short period we are in the NBA. For the people who don't enjoy
Mhm.
it while they're there, I mean, it's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
So I would say that mindfulness, take that from Mr. Duffy. Don't live a short distance from your body. Be in your body. Recognize what you've got. Be grateful. Grateful changes the brain. It's a virtuous cycle. The more gratitude we practice, the more it grows. The more we appreciate, the more things appreciate.
It seems so simple, but I mean, I do gratitude every morning. I have a gratitude journal, and I force myself to do it no matter what. And I write down three things that I'm grateful for, and it's something I'm doing for 5 years now, pretty much every morning. But that's so powerful when you're talking about connections. Like that's connecting to your world around you. So, in your book, Super Psyched, it's like, okay, the four connections, and one of them is your environment, right? So that could be your car, it could be your bicycle, like looking around. Like I have a nice view from my place, and I write that down every morning. I love Pete's coffee. I write that down. All these things, so that connecting with the stuff in your immediate environment, I think is really powerful. Um, so Adam, I want to we're being mindful of the time here. There's something I really wanted to ask you about. I want to make sure I do,
For
and
sure.
it's your TEDx talk about emotions and the data that men miss.
Sure.
It's fantastic
Oh, thanks,
talk.
man.
I mean, it's great, and everyone should watch it. And I'll try to link to it. But I work with a lot of men in my therapy practice, and in fact, almost exclusively. And in your TEDx talk, you're talking about men and emotions, and this thing like if we're gonna connect to ourselves and connect to the world, this really the starting point is emotions and being able to not be afraid of them and not push them away and not compartmentalize them. Like I think in your talk, you talk about compartmentalization, which is a fancy way of saying putting something on the back burner that you have to deal with, but you don't have time at the moment. It's a great short-term strategy, but long-term strategy, your metaphor was it's like stacking up boxes around your house and being a hoarder. Have all these things all these emotions that you're putting off dealing with, right? And in your talk, you're saying that men often have a difficult time labeling, naming, and like processing emotions. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about that. Is there hope for men with their
100% hope.
emotions?
It
Yeah.
can definitely be learned. Almost, we were born with this ability, but we unlearned it through socialization. The weird thing is that research indicates that males are born more emotionally connected than their female counterparts. Something
Interesting.
along the way happens. We are
Okay.
taught not to feel them.
Hmm.
If I was to say to you, Michael, I just fixed your car, and you walk in and there's electrical tape all over the dashboard covering all of the measures.
Uh-huh.
You look at me and say, dude, what the hell did you do to my car?
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, you don't need that. Just drive the
Hmm.
car, enjoy it, hit
Yeah.
pedal to the metal, buddy. Yeah,
Right.
but I don't know how fast I'm going. I don't know if the oil's okay. I don't know a
Right.
whole bunch of things. Do I have enough gas?
Hmm. Hmm.
We do that with our emotions. Emotions are exist for our
Yeah.
survival to inform us of something.
Mhm. Yeah.
And as men, we unlearn the ability to name our emotions.
Yeah.
And instead, our emotions drive us rather than us being in the driver's seat of the emotions.
Right.
What is this emotion telling me? Do I need to act on it? Or do I just need, like, what do I need to do with this information? So I could say something that is a relationship killer. I
Mhm.
could say something that I can't take back because I
Mm.
felt it, but I didn't know it and I said it.
Yeah.
But what if instead I was to feel this emotion and ask myself, what does this mean? And what it actually means, maybe in this case, is I don't want to tell this person to go to hell. What I want to do is ask this person, could we do this instead?
Right.
Like, I don't want to, like for the 40th time, let's say a friend said, I'm choosing the dinner place. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it again.
Right.
Consent and resent, as we were talking about
Exactly.
earlier.
That's
And then I
right.
say, go to hell. I don't want to go to the same place that you go to every time. But what if I was to instead, in a very diplomatic sense, say, hey, I'd like to choose this time?
Right. Ask for what
And
you
that
want.
would asking for what you want. So there's definitely hope for men. We can
Yes.
help men reinstate their birthright, which is to have access to their emotions and to use them as data to inform, what do I do on the drop down menu? What is the best thing to do with this emotion? Sometimes it just means, you know what, I need to take a nap.
Mhm.
I've got a really short fuse right now. I haven't slept. I've got a 30-minute window here. Maybe a nap is what I need because I got
Mhm.
a big meeting coming up. I'm gonna get a little, yeah, a little zone out time. Or maybe it means I need to go for a run. Maybe it means I need to call a friend and say, hey, something really crappy just happened. Can you just hear me out? I just need a little support, because we know that perceived support lends itself to better outcomes. But the sad tragedy is men become loners. We've
Yeah.
even lionized the wrong thing here. The strong silent type. That's not great as a
Yeah.
model if it doesn't come from choice. Now,
Right.
there are strong silent people who choose to be that way and are able to articulate their needs and
Mhm.
be in relationship with themselves and others. I'm not suggesting that strong and silent is necessarily bad, but I'm saying that if a person is just hitting the mute button on their life,
Mhm.
we've got a problem. And it will inform relationships, it will inform all kinds of outcomes. So yeah, we can relearn this. To borrow from Steve Austin in the $6 million Man, which now sounds like a bargain in today's numbers, we can rebuild this.
Right. I love how you referenced that. That's
I've
a
never
great
done that
show.
before, but it just showed up now. Part of the
Yeah.
thing that something greater is happening. You are evoking something within me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm learning in relationship right now.
Right. Yeah. So these four connections, again, they're universal, absolutely. And I think Adam is like, especially for men, it's just being honest with ourselves. You could be feeling sad, for example, or fearful, or some of these kind of, quote unquote, vulnerable emotions or whatever. And that's okay. But as long as you're just honest and just name it and say, okay, what do I want to do about this? It doesn't mean, I think there's like this kind of misnomer that, especially for men, of like, now I have to wallow in this. If I'm
That's right.
sad, it means now I'm like, I have to cry, and be, it's like, no, well, you can if you want, but like, what are you going to do with the emotions? And you're honestly naming them. You're not compartmentalizing. You're not sweeping under the rug. It's creating your own psychological safety, really. Like, it's
And
okay to, right?
you got it. And, I'm
Yeah,
going to close on this idea because
yeah,
unfortunately our time has come, but
yeah, yeah.
we become better crafters of questions we ask ourselves.
Right, right.
So one of the great ideas is the quality of our questions determines the quality of our life. So if I lose my keys and I ask myself, how could I be such an idiot? That doesn't get me closer to my keys. In fact, it
Exactly.
just causes me to go through a Google search in my brain that will
Right.
render results showing me all the times I was an idiot. It doesn't get me close. But a better question would be, what do I need now? Who could I ask about this? How can I retrace my steps? Could I look at my calendar and find out where have I been that my keys might exist?
Yeah.
Better questions
Right.
is akin to emotional intelligence that you and I are talking about here in terms of leveraging the data of our emotions. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Adam, I wish we had more time to talk because we were talking before the show and had tons to talk about. But so just tell people where they can get your new awesome book, Super Psyched, and maybe your website. They can find out more about you.
Absolutely. It's available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. In Dr. Adam Dorsay, DradamDorsay.com is my website. Be very happy to hear from you. And my podcast is Super Psyched. And I do keynotes at various organizations. I love doing those. So if you have the need for a keynote speaker, in person or virtual, I'm your guy. And it's been great talking with you, Michael.
Yeah, Adam, you too. I love it. I love it. So thanks everyone for tuning in to the podcast. And Adam and I had a great conversation today. Adam, take care.
Michael, great being with you, man.